rest and worship and chores. So if you are joining us, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your weekend to come on. If you're watching live from the lobby, like I said, feel free to come into the session to interact directly with the speakers. The whole point of this conference is direct access. How many times are you going to be able to ask Gabby Gay a question directly, or Khadija Stewart? So we'll kick off today with the last day. Of course, all great things come to an end, unfortunately. But before that, we'll just introduce myself again. I'm Musao Ashteen. I'm with the Journal of CSER, which is the Caribbean Environmental Sciences and Renewable Energy. And I'm joined with Omar. So Omar, you want to do a quick introduction?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome, as Masao says, to day 3 and sadly last day of our Climate Gen Z conference. Of course, as you all know, this is a collaborative effort led by the Journal of CSER and the Proper Foundation, two very solidly Caribbean-based organizations. And yeah, we've had 2 fantastic days of engagement, of sharing, of experiences. And, you know, I don't want to say, you know, that this is probably going to be the best day, but, you know, we've had 3 solid days, and I know our keynotes coming up are going to be fantastic. And yeah, and of course, you know, we've been sharing across all different social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So please feel free, if you're viewing us across social media as well.
Oh, we had the good old pause.
So comments on those videos, you can share. We have a bunch of hashtags, takeaways. Oops, am I breaking up a bit?
Yes, I will continue for you. No worries.
Yeah,
Tech is not always our friend on a Sunday. So yes, what Omar is saying is just continue to share on your social media platforms. We're across many of them. We're live streaming across 8 of them for the session, for instance, in the lobby as well. So keep going, even though it's the last day, we still have impact to make. So this event would not have been possible without these 3 organizations. So the Open Society Foundations, the Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB, and CANARI. So thank you so much for making this a reality for the Gen Z participants and everyone else. In terms of the conference itself, it's the last day, so I figured most of you are fairly familiar with the conference. We're not going to go into too much detail, but I will give you an understanding of what to expect for the day. We're starting with our keynote discussion on dealing with climate anxiety. We're talking with Gabby backstage before, actually, and she was saying, you know, she had so many requests on what even is climate anxiety. So if that's a burning question for you, stay tuned. And then another one is managing activist stress. You know, we have a lot of burden placed on us, a lot of onerous tasks that we need to do as activists, and it is stressful. Some days we just don't want to do it. So how do we manage those difficult times? And it's okay to have difficult times. And then we have a mini career fair. So we have 7 organizations: Sadie Consulting, CSER, Proper Foundation, Advisors Next Door, Breadfruit Collective, and some others that will be joining us for this session. So it would be good if you want to learn about opportunities with the organizations. You can speak directly to people who are in charge of these organizations to let you know how you can take life beyond your activism and actually find a walk. And then we'll get into closing remarks, where we wrap up what we've been doing over the past 3 days, what we've learned, who we've spoken to, and then get an understanding of how we support your journey afterwards. Because even though all good things come to an end, doesn't mean impact needs to end. And of course, we have in-person, in-country meetups. So if you're based in Barbados and Suriname, we have 2 leads who have made themselves available, and it's quite difficult to get leads on a Sunday, it would seem. So we're down to Barbados and Suriname. That doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity to meet up. If you're in those countries, connect with those people in the lobby and take those discussions further. We just wanted to shine light on this amazing poster that was made during a live session yesterday. So we had our paint and sip, and this was produced by Chris-Anne Bedassi from Trinidad. These are all pieces that are either collected from her garden or newspapers or a magazine. So the woman was a cutout from the magazine, the A, the D, the V, all came from different parts of a magazine to get advocate. And this was a truly amazing piece, along with others. It's not the only one that we'll be sharing with our social media, on our social media platforms, etc. Let's get into some of the boring bits, and that's the housekeeping. So please, respect is key. We want to make sure that you have fun, and when you're having fun, we want others to have fun as well. So keep the chats cordial, friendly, only vibes. And let's avoid any unmuting situations where somebody's shouting at you for your volume being too loud, or your cat randomly runs across the screen. Remember, what you show us is everybody else seeing as well. And then chats are for networking and Q&A for questions. Please keep all questions in the Q&A panel so we can make sure we can get those to the speakers. But in the chats, we want to know where you're from, what you're doing, what is the work going on with you. Please feel free to share all of that information with us. Remember that these sessions and plenary sessions are going to be live streamed in the lobby as well as across 8 social media platforms. So if you have any issues with that, just let us know. But without further ado, let's get started with the first session on dealing with climate anxiety with none other than Khadija Stewart and Gabrielle Gay. So over to you guys.
Thanks so much, Masao. And it's day 3. Very excited to be here and to be having this conversation with Gabby. And interestingly enough, Gabby and I were part of the Caribbean Youth Parliament for Climate Justice, however long ago. So it's so great to be reconnected with you and to talk on this amazing topic. I am Khadija Stewart, like Masao mentioned, founder of Eco Vibes Environmental Creatives and the Caribbean Regional Representative at Sustainable Ocean Alliance. So Gabby, if you could give us a quick intro and then we would dive into the topic.
So good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon, good night, depending on where you're viewing this in the world. You know, it's a pleasure to be here. And yes, wonderful to reunite with you, Khadija, and everyone involved. And my name is Gabrielle Gay. I'm the founder of the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, and we're home to the first, largest, most awarded education programs of their kind to come out of the Caribbean globally. And basically, you know, we just really work at the intersection of climate action and education, with a lot of our programs focusing on governance and policy and action for climate change. And outside of that, I do a lot of work with the United Nations as an ambassador, part of the UN Youth Advisory Group for Barbados and the OCS, and also the Barbados ambassador for the AIS Forum. And along with that, finally, I'm a social media influencer using the power of social media for good, you know, reaching over 1 million people with a message of positivity, with a message of action and positive change. So I'm excited to be here and really to delve into the topic today.
Gabby, I'm loving your energy already and like the emphasis on action, action, action. You're all about action. I get it, right? Nice, lovely. So let's talk about climate anxiety. I know you mentioned before that people were asking you what it is, what is that, what does that look like, etc. So let's just jump straight in to you. What is climate anxiety and what does that look like in the Caribbean?
Thank you so much. So yes, from the moments that I place the posters on my social media, and this is an intergenerational theory, by the way, from everyone, millennials, more vintage and seasoned individuals, as well as Gen Z. The first question was, what is that? I've never heard that term. And I'm so excited about this session because we're going to delve into this because it's so under-discussed. So climate anxiety, by definition, according to the Yale University, is basically when you feel a deep or fundamental concern or distress about anything related towards climate change. So in simple words, if you feel anxious, if you've ever felt deeply troubled, if you've ever felt fearful for the future with regards to climate change or anything eco-action or ecological related, then there's a really high chance that you have, experienced climate anxiety in some form or fashion. And what's the data like? Because I wanted to also give context, right, globally, and with regards to states. So just quickly, Caroline Hickman. So if you've done, and anyone who's read into climate anxiety in any form or fashion would know about Caroline Hickman. She's a renowned psychotherapist, and her actual, study and focus is climate anxiety. And she did this fantastic study on over 10,000 young people from across the entire world, and just asked them, their feelings and their, just their perspective in regards to climate and their mental health. And the data was a little abysmal, but don't worry, guys. Later on in this session, right? But over 59% of people believe that humanity is doomed. And over 75% of those young people believe that, the future is frightening with regards to climate anxiety and climate action in general. And something that she stressed, though, which I really want to stress in this session as well, is that one, it's not a medical disease. You're going to be okay. If you experience this, it's a natural function of the body. Anytime that's built into us biologically, when we see something or hear something that is, it's not good news, all right? But what's happening with the climate, that anxious reaction is actually natural, all right? So she wanted to stress that. And then she went on to discuss that another key factor that is fueling this climate anxiety is the lack of action, the governmental and policy inaction that young people are witnessing, Gen Z is witnessing with regards to climate action. So there's a lot of talk, but there's nothing really being done. So 65% of young people believe that the governments have failed and betrayed us when it comes to climate action. And over 50% believe that there's nothing going on and they have no confidence going forward. So I just wanted to provide that context for, the multiplicity of individuals who wanted to know what anxiety was and, what it's like from a global perspective and in the Caribbean.
I love that you came in clutch with the stats. Like you were like, I'm going to talk about this. I have my data to prove it. I'm coming to back everything up. I love that. I love that. Prepared.
Prepared.
Yeah, but I know too, like when we think of just anxiety on a whole in the Caribbean, it's not something that we really accept, or if we do accept it, it's almost like a norm. So it's like, how do we differentiate having climate anxiety from just normal life anxiety? And how do we know that it's like tied to climate change or just everyday life?
Okay, so glad you asked that. So basically, going back to Yale, it's always tied to the ecological state of the world. So climate anxiety, you have these natural anxious reactions strictly when, for example, we all know about the doomsday, how it works with social media, how it works with media. Constantly we hear we're running out of time. 1.5 to stay alive. 2030 agenda, we're halfway through and we haven't done what we needed to do as yet. These are the constant messages that are being pushed across media. And, rightfully so, because the media does have the responsibility to report the truth. And the truth is a little abysmal. So climate anxiety is relegated to when you have that natural anxious reaction of, wow, this is scary. The future does not look bright. What can I do to change it? And why aren't governments doing more? So if you felt anything along those lines, then you may have experienced climate anxiety. So that's what separates it from regular anxiety from our regular, because it's strictly relegated to climate-related action or inaction or events.
Yeah, interesting. Great response. And I was just thinking also, as you mentioned that, talking about strictly reacting to lack of action or climate change events, etc. But I was also wondering too, if we could classify like not knowing as an individual how to act with all this information underneath the climate anxiety umbrella. And if you want to touch a little bit more on that, like figuring out, oh my God, as an individual, what can I do? Can I even do anything, etc.?
I'm so happy to ask that, because one thing I always tell anyone, whenever I do a speech or whatnot, we spend a lot of time speaking about the problems, which is fine because you need to analyze that. But we have to get to the next stage. What are the solutions? What are we? And particularly with regards to, Gen Z, the question is, what can I do? right? What can I do? What's the power of one? Because I find a lot of times, particularly with Gen Z and millennials and just young people in general, they're always, very aspirational. So we're looking at individuals who have done incredible work in their spaces, but sometimes that can produce the effects of, that intimidation, imposter syndrome, feeling like, okay, well, I may not be able to do such a huge effort. But I always want to stress that firstly, it's about understanding the power of the indelible power of one. So the is, as I said, reclaiming your personal power. What can you do? And a really great way that I always, for our mentees or for our foundations, lay the foundation of asking, firstly, what are you good at? So let's think about it. For me, for example, education has always been my passion, law, policy, politics. So we went that vein at our foundation for climate action. But there are individuals who, quite simply, your talent, for example, is making people laugh. Your talent is cooking, baking, painting. We just saw an incredible painting from that artist, that came out of the paint and sit session. So how can you use these, innate talents that you have, create paintings, create art, create, for example, sketches, comedy sketches on social media? How can you use these talents that you have then to combine with a positive climate action to create change? So that's the first step. Recognizing what you're good at, right? Understanding that you have the power of one, because everybody has a sphere of influence. I'm sure, Khadija, that, for example, you enjoyed the meal and you told your friends, yeah, you need to go try out this restaurant. That meal, as I said, was busting, right? So that's your sphere of influence, your family, your friends. You don't have to have 1 million followers, right? You can start there. So that's the first step. Then secondly, you want to see how you can find community. So you can also transmute, those feelings and that energy built up from this anxiety into positive action. And a really good place to find that is actually a site called the Good Grief Network. So Good Grief Network. And they're a nonprofit. And get this, Khadija, nonprofit that specifically deals with support with regards to all anxiety or any feelings of discomfort with regards to climate change or climate inaction. So you just go on their website, they have this 10-point peer-to-peer program. So they're going to connect you with people from all over the world who are feeling the same way as you, who want to create solutions just like you. And they'll link you together and with certified and qualified advisors, of course, and you work together with your peers to create actionable change. And lastly, I would say, shameless plug here, but come on over to the Erline Bradshaw Foundation. If you're interested in law, policy, and we were in the parliament together. If you're interested in anything like that, we have a ton of climate action programs that speak specifically to striking at the core. Because remember the Caroline Hickman study, the main thing that young people and Gen Z and youth in general were concerned about was the lack of policy and inaction. So at the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, our climate action education programs deal specifically with equipping young people, particularly in the law and politics spaces, and those who are interested in galvanizing them action in this regard and connecting them to the top officials and government officials in this field and private as well, law and politicians, to create working together to create change. So those are some of the key ways and networks that you can really take your climate action. Start at a power, check out the Good Grief Network, and also check it out as well at the Erline Bradshaw Foundation. We're waiting with open arms.
So much things to unpack there. But maybe it's because I'm hungry, but I'm so hyper focused on the fact that the one example that you use on the power of one, you were like, oh, can you just show when you tell your friends about a restaurant? And I do that all the time. So the fact that you said that, I was just like, oh my God, this girl knows me.
Honestly, Khadija, that's one of the main components as well of climate anxiety. What can I do? I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
Lawyer. I don't have a huge foundation. I don't have this huge social media presence. So Gen Z and young people, they just feel as if, they feel paralyzed, but everyone is an influencer. And I speak as an influencer myself and an activist myself. Every single person you're an influencer because you have that direct influence. And as we know, nothing is better than word of mouth. So as you said, when you tell your friend, this restaurant was amazing. Oh, I got this beautiful shirt from my favorite store. You need to check it out. That is your influence. And that is how you then transmute that climate anxiousness and anxiety into action by using your special skills and your power of one and community to make, climate action work for you.
Yeah, very, very, very true. And you also touched before on the network. What's it called? Good Grief Network. And I was like, what? This is something that exists? Where was this like 4 or 3 years ago when I was now getting into the field and I was having all my different panic attacks? Like, where was this? Where was this? But it's so good that there's an NGO that understands that, young people really need this kind of support and that they've dedicated their time, their effort, and their energy into supporting youth, into, dealing with it, because it's rough and it's very much real. And sometimes we mightn't think it's real, or we might not understand that, wait a minute, this is actually climate anxiety that I'm experiencing. And having a group of like-minded individuals who get it is so important.
Yes. And, the thing is, I wanted to also speak about the fact that, because that is something that is not talked about. It's so criminally underrated, right, of climate anxiety. Because particularly here in small island developing states, developing countries, and, marginalized and vulnerable communities in developed countries as well, when hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Janet, Haiti, we live with the psychological effects of climate change every single day in the Caribbean, in states, around, I said, vulnerable communities around the world. It takes a toll. So now this is so validating to know that it's real. What you're feeling, that anxiety, it is valid, right? And, here and I can speak, from around the world, and particularly with people of color, indigenous communities, mental health is something that's not discussed enough. So massive. Even to this conference, Climate Gen Z conference, for having a segment on this and letting individuals know, yes, this is a real, genuine phenomenon that you're experiencing. And you have the Good Grief Network, you have the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, you have your individual power of one to be able to make a massive and perpetually positive change in this area.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And something that you also mentioned before that I think it will be great, because sometimes we experience things and we think that, oh my God, it might be me alone going through something like this, right? So you touched on imposter syndrome, and that is also a very big part of climate anxiety, not just in finding your voice or your talent or your skill, but when you realize this is something I love, and then you start entering certain spaces, whether it be international or regional, and you're just like, oh my God, do I really belong here? Is my voice valid, etc.? I would love for you to share a time that you probably experienced imposter syndrome and like the anxiety that comes with that, being in this space, and any advice you could give for other young people getting into it.
Brilliant question. Thank you so much. For example, when I started our climate action education program, the FemLex cohort, it's a legal mentorship and legal and politics mentorship education program. And I'm still a law student at this stage, right? So it was crazy because, you're not a lawyer as yet, but being in the system already and understanding and seeing the gaps in the governmental inaction and the policy inaction on many levels, even as a student, I understood this is a gap that needs to be filled. But of course, logically, sometimes you're thinking, well, should I wait until I'm a lawyer to start this? Should I wait until, for someone who's interested in politics, maybe I should wait until I'm a politician, or maybe I should wait. Oh, you don't have to wait. Shift that perspective. A quote that my mom sent to me, Mrs. Margaret Gay, and she's a co-founder of the foundation as well. She always tells me that fear, if we look at fear, it's actually, break it down into an acronym. It's about facing everything and rising, right? Face everything and rise. So she says, think about it, Gabrielle. You don't have to be an attorney. You get there eventually, of course, through your studies, but you don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be a politician. You have to remove that imposter syndrome. Just start where you're at right now. And the effects of just beginning and starting the program, the fact that it just exploded across the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, being the first, largest, and only program of its kind to promote the Caribbean, because it filled that gap, right? Because that revolution that was needed. So the key about imposter syndrome is, one, don't think too much about it, right? Put the thinking into the planning. I know all my activists, I know all my leaders, overthinking, it is our specialty. One thing we can do is overthink, right? So don't put energy into the overthinking part, because you will find reasons to talk yourself out of what you need to do, right? What you need to do is take that imposter syndrome, take that anxiety related to getting started, and pour it into finding that community, pour it into building, the proper proposals, finding resources that you need to get your ideas off the ground, finding the support, shout out to Proper Foundation, shout out to, all these places that definitely support, and then transmute that energy here. And that is how I was able to get started, and the results speak for themselves. Over the past 20 years, we've reached over 500,000 students and youth all over the world, particularly from SIDS and developing countries and students of color. And all of this began because you have to, instead of being fearful, face everything and what you want to do and rise and put your plan into action. So just begin. Know that wherever you are an influencer, and that is how you that imposter syndrome and anxiety.
Bro, you are on point today with the advice. Listen, I want to give you a round of applause, a high five, everything, a hug, everything all in one. You see that? Face everything and rise. Like, I wrote it down, and I'm probably going to have it everywhere I go, because it's so true. I mean, a lot of times I am scared when I enter different spaces, and like, this is probably my literally 100th webinar or something of that nature, and I still was just like, oh my god, here I am once again feeling a little anxious, etc., but still doing it regardless. And it's that face everything and rise mentality that I think so much of us, especially youth in the Caribbean, need to hear and need to practice. So I'm very glad that you mentioned that, as well as putting the energy into the planning, because you personally attacked me when you said overthinking. That is my specialty. So when you said it, I was just like, okay, she's coming to me today. But yeah,
by nature, space leaders, we are thinkers, right? We're looking at what's going on today. By nature, that's just how we are. So it's beautiful to understand. I think the part of the blockages that we have with getting started is really not understanding that these things are natural and not understanding that these things are valid. So even as Caroline Hickman, the psychologist and psychotherapist, said, all of this is our biological reactions to something that's challenging and something that's daunting, right? So it's okay to feel that fear. But as I said earlier, you have to face it and rise regardless. And that is the key. And I tell this to the mentees, I said all the time at the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, I tell them, look, I was scared too. I started my journey into leadership at 13 years old. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, all of that. It's scary. You're taking on a challenge that literally is affecting the world, and particularly for us in the Caribbean and small island developing states, something that affects us daily, right? We've seen people die. We've seen people hurricanes die in hurricanes, die in flash floods. When the ash, look at the volcano that erupted recently, and the ash covered Barbados. People really struggled. So we've seen these things up front. So part of that anxiety and part of that blockage is actually our own traumas, our own climate traumas, right? So it's to understand that it's natural. So but you just have to go over, and you just have to understand that you need to transmute that into the actual action and planning. And that is where the magic begins.
Mic drop. Yeah, but I'm just thinking also, like, when you hear of like climate anxiety situations in the global north, for example. So like, and I'm just gonna use this person, Greta, when she was just like, oh my God, climate change, it's so real. I'm gonna jump out of school and go and sit on the side of the streets and protest and march, etc. If we go out of our good thoughts and decide we are going to not go to school and go and protest for the climate or something like that in the Caribbean, the way our parents will drag us by our ears and carry us back in school, right? So it's just like really understanding that climate anxiety looks different in different parts of the world, but it also doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I just want to really know, how do I say this? How do we really differentiate global north climate anxiety from what we are experiencing here again in the Caribbean, and really be able to carry that to that stage? Because a lot of times their climate anxiety kind of just looks like panic attacks, the end. Whereas a panic attack because climate change is coming and it is happening. But I feel like for us in the Caribbean, it's something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as you said correctly, for a lot of individuals in different countries, for them, climate change is a concept, right? It's more so in theory in a lot of ways, right? And they don't experience as frequently the issues that we experience on a lived and daily basis. So you're absolutely correct. There are various degrees. What I think is really necessary, and this is something that I am completely passionate about, is that for a lot of these individuals, like Greta and whatnot, who are doing incredible work, of course, but there needs to be a deepened marriage and a deepened partnership and amalgamation with individuals who are actually living this every single day. So I need to see more Indigenous activists. I need to see more young people from the Caribbean getting the same opportunities and the same platform. And this is why I'm so passionate about this Climate Gen Z conference, really giving more of that spotlight to individuals from small and developing states, from the Caribbean. And as you said, it changes according to every single region. So for example, in Barbados, we more so are seeing our climate change in regards to the heat, because we're more easterly than other islands, get less hurricanes, and they tend to, they're not as rapid. We get a lot of aftershocks versus, for example, Haiti, versus Trinidad, versus St. Lucia, these type of places, Dominica, who are hit more readily and hit more forcefully, Jamaica, hurricanes, because of their geographical location. So as you said correctly, it changes what climate anxiety looks like and how it is nuanced and how experienced. It changes per location and geographical proximity. So what we have to do is ensure at every single stage, COP, all these conferences need to have a greater presence of Indigenous activists and a greater presence of leaders and climate youth leaders from the Caribbean, from Latin America, from these places, to have a greater voice, so that when the policies, right, and I believe that this is a huge part as to why there's so much inaction, so that when these policies are formed, then they also have the nuances from each and every single location. So that is a Greta and these other individuals can have a deeper understanding and have a more effective approach going forward to ensure that we do more to lessen the climate anxiety, because I do believe it will never fully go away. I do believe that there are situations where that cannot be eradicated, but we can mitigate them and adapt, right, to ensure that as much as possible, the solutions are reached. So that is where I believe the solution comes, a deeper marriage between individuals who are living it and the individuals who, for them, is more of a theoretical and aftershock concept.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, we are for sure 100% living it, and sometimes people don't even realize, but like in Trinidad, we often say if a storm is coming or something like that, oh, nothing to worry about because God is a Trini, ha ha ha, let's go by a bar and have a drink. And people don't even realize that that in itself is a trauma response, but Trini is not ready for that conversation as yet. But I love the fact that you also mentioned, the inclusion of youth and Indigenous as well as Caribbean voices in some of these spaces. And that's one of the comments that I see here in the chat saying, that they're very grateful. I think the lead is Mackay, very grateful for a conference like this because often, youth are marginalized communities are basically underrepresented in the decision-making spaces. So Yeah, very happy about that comment and the fact that you touched on it. And I want to open the floor now to if anyone have any questions that you want to ask Gabby or myself. We're here, now is the time, and you're getting amazing advice. So let's see. I see our next comment. Yes, to the Indigenous communities stepping up. Yeah, somebody else is also agreeing that like anxiety and climate are not really taken seriously in Trinidad, and it's so nice to see somebody tagging it. It's true. It's not. And I feel like to an extent is the overall Caribbean, because if it is as youth or something like that, if we experiencing any form of anxiety, most of the time your parents is like, "What's wrong with you? Get up and go to school." There's no time to be depressed. I working hard. There's a roof over your head. You have food. You have clothes. What are you depressed about, etc.? Like it's completely dismissed. So this having a topic like this and the fact that we're discussing it really brings it to light. And I'm so glad that you're here sharing your insights.
Absolutely. And it goes back, and this is why I'm so passionate about education. And this is why in our foundation, our main focus is education, because ultimately people cannot what they don't know, right? Let that sink in. People cannot fix what they don't know. The opportunity for change and revolution occurs when first there's knowledge and there's awareness. So even for us and our generation and Gen Z, the millennials and whatnot, the shift towards validation regarding mental health came because there was the education, right? The education and awareness occurred first. So that is why, for us at the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, we're so passionate about education on climate anxiety, because people first have to learn about it, and then first it's real and it's valid and it's a real thing, which is why I definitely was so passionate to provide the data and the context on it. And then by understanding that it's real and it's really happening and what they're feeling is valid, then they're open now to becoming more and really utilizing their power of one and learning how to transmute that into positive action.
Yeah, I see we have here 2 questions in the chat. One is, they're coming in clutch now, but let's go back up a little bit. What are some of the techniques that you use, Gabby, to like mentally psych yourself up to take on a challenge when you feel anxious about it?
Okay, great. So the first thing, I always call it having the eagle eye point of view. So very often when we're in an anxious situation, we tend to focus on, all the negatives. We're in it. It's very just focused on the negatives of what's happening. I always take a step back, look at it as if you were an eagle. So you take yourself completely out of the situation. And actually, I like to do a lot of writing. So I write everything out. So what are you feeling? That's the first thing. Get it out of right? That's the first thing. Get it out of your head. What exactly are you feeling? So try to verbalize that and write it out. Then the next step after doing that is you look at how you're feeling, you look at the problem, whatever problem it is that you're trying to attack. In this case, let's use, of course, climate anxiety. How am I feeling about, how do I feel when I watch the television and I see, that we're not where we need to be between the agenda, we're not where we need to be for climate. How does that make me feel? What are those emotions? Then secondly, after you write that out and get that out of your head clearly, the second step is, again, what am I good at? What am I naturally drawn to that can help me create positive action? So this is where you begin to list out potential solutions of what you're good at. And then the next step, how can I marry this with climate action? So if I like to bake, how can I create cookies or bakes or treats that can convey a positive climate action message? If I am someone that people come to me for recommendations or for advice, maybe I can create talks or reels that point people to resources or give ideas and recommendations on how we can all combat climate anxiety. Like this is how you go. That's a 3-step process that I use, right? To be able to, 1, get outside of the problem and look at it from eagle eyes point of view. So you come away from those negative emotions, then figure out what strengths I have, right, that can combat the issue. And then thirdly, after I figure out the strengths that can combat the issue, then how can I go about finding community? How can I go about finding how can I go about finding individuals that can help? So in this case, it can also look like reaching out to licensed therapists, licensed mental health advisors and whatnot in this regard to discuss. You can even do deep breathing, breathing exercises, dance, exercise, counseling as well too, to find that community and find individuals that can assist. And following that 3-step process is how I've been able to really, as I said, transmute that energy and really find solutions. And one other thing I would say as well, once again, going back to removing fear. One of the big things I recognize with young people is about finding those resources. Guys, I'm telling you, LinkedIn, let me put you on real quick. LinkedIn, you need to link on your LinkedIn, okay? A lot of people just go on LinkedIn, and don't get me wrong, you're posting your achievements, all different things. Please understand there's a message button for a reason. Yeah, now let me put you on real quick. Get your elevator pitch. Google what an elevator pitch is, all right? Get your elevator pitch. Find people in your network. Start Googling, put in climate anxiety, climate change, climate counseling, equal action. And LinkedIn will start to bring up all the people in that relevant search in that area. Get your elevator pitch and send them a message. Let them know what you're seeking to do and that you believe that there are great synergies between the work that you guys are doing, and go from there. I promise you, these people are not as scary as you think they are. They were young like you. They were young and were starting out like you, and you'll be surprised at how many people respond and are willing to give you 15, 30 minutes of their day, even if it doesn't result in a partnership, to put you on the right track. That is a personal tip that I have used over my career, and that's helped to really expand the length and breadth of the work that we've done.
Yeah, listen, no, you're absolutely right. When you said LinkedIn, I was just like, yes, because people don't use the platform as much as they should. And when I tell you guys, if you don't know anything about like my work and stuff that I do, just you can check it out on LinkedIn. But the reason I am where I am right now is literally because of that platform, in terms of finding grants, in terms of connecting to like-minded individuals, in terms of just growing individually, professionally, emotionally, everything. A big portion of that came from LinkedIn. So I'm very glad that you put people onto that, because it's such a critical platform. And again, we don't really use it as much as we should. But I know we're running short on time, so I want to get through some of the other questions real quick. I see somebody else asks, how do we go about, including the older heads in the climate anxiety conversation? And this person says, I can't even imagine how to start having that conversation with my family without being completely dismissed.
Okay, so quickly, I'm really happy that the individual asked about connecting with older heads. One of the main things, I will tell you, as I started a journey at 10 and started really actually our first program at 13. One of the main things over the past years, I can tell you that young people in general, this is not all of us, youth, myself included, the main struggle that I see with young people when approaching older individuals, I always give realistic advice, right? Hit it big the first time, right? Especially if you're approaching someone that is extremely busy. We just have to be realistic, all right? We would, in a perfect world, they would have 10 emails for you to get to the point. They would have 80 hours to listen to you. But in the real world, that's just not how it works, right? So the main that I see with young people connecting with older heads is that they didn't plan their approach properly. They didn't have a properly researched proposal. They didn't have a proper elevator pitch when reaching out to these individuals. We've got to remember, these people are really busy. They're short on time, but they are open to assisting. So the main key is that you have to have a very compelling elevator pitch, which is basically your opening message. That's what an elevator pitch is. Hi, my name is insert name. This is what I'm seeking to do. This is how I'm seeking to do it. And I believe that we could work well together on this. That's basically what an elevator pitch is. You have to ensure that that is super strong. The next step is that you have to have, particularly if you're doing like any type of advocacy campaigns or like, for example, I do a lot of like education programs and whatnot. You have to have a well-researched and well thought out proposal, right? So please, you have the ideas, but you have to ensure that you can back them up. So I would recommend before reaching out, before rushing to reach out, make sure your foundations are strong. So anybody, even like in general in life, nothing goes well with foundation. So please put some thought into what you're going to say, put some thought into what you're looking to execute. It doesn't have to be a 5 or 10-year plan, but you have to put some thought in. So that is the best way to connect and get the more vintage and seasoned individuals to listen to you.
More vintage. I'm gonna start using that from now on. Vintage individuals. I love that. I love that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I just want to add one other thing to it. A lot of times, sometimes when we think about reaching out to the older generations vintage, for some, whether it be climate action or anything like that, a lot of times we tend to like attack their inaction or attack something. And as humans, our natural response to an attack is to defend. You're not trying to hear what anybody's trying to say. You're not trying to cooperate. You're not trying to do anything but defend. So when you go in the mindset that you're attacking somebody, you're attacking their character, you're attacking their work, etc., you're not going to make much progress or much leeway. So that's also something to think about in your strategy and like that foundational work that you were stressing on.
You said correctly. As I said, that's the strongest message. Lead with what it is that you're trying to do. Lead with what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that is what's going to open the doors for you, right? And make it impactful and to the point. And that is what the doors to open for you.
Well, Gabby, I want to thank you so much for joining. I see we had 1 or 2 other questions. Like people just wanted to know more about your story and your journey, etc. So real quick, if you could tell people like where they could find you on social media so that they could connect and learn more.
Okay, great. So very quickly, guys, super easy for you because I'm on social media as my name. So Gabrielle Gay on LinkedIn, Gabrielle Gay _ on Instagram, and www.erlinebradshawfoundation.org. So ERLINE BradshawFoundation.org. And definitely reach out to me on social media. That's on Instagram, that's where I'm at, and LinkedIn, and definitely check out our website and you'll see all the resources that we have. We have a contact form as well too. So if you want to reach out and get in touch, definitely hit us up on our website and reach out to us on social media. Like, I love that. Come on Instagram, follow me, I'll follow back. Let's connect. And also let's touch base on LinkedIn so that we stay connected after today to learn more, because we're going to have a lot of initiatives and whatnot going on with regards to climate anxiety and whatnot. So stay connected and stay in the loop. And I look forward to staying in touch with all of you. And thank you so much for an incredible conversation today.
Well, you girl, hats off to you because your responses, your advice, everything was absolutely, absolutely amazing. And I think that it was so great that, Caesar and Cropper Foundation created this space for us to have this conversation because it's something that is extremely important and overlooked in the region. And if it's one thing I want everybody to remember from this entire conversation is face everything and rise. Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, let me say it again with more confidence. Face everything and rise.
Yes. Come to climate anxiety, face everything and rise. Remember the Good Grief Network. Remember the Erline Bradshaw Foundation. Césaire as well, Journal of Césaire, Cropper Foundation. We are here to support you. Thank you for having me today. It was an honor.
Yeah, so guys, we have our next session coming up with one of my very good friends, Bodhi Patel. We're both connected from the Sustainable Ocean Alliance Network, and he's going to be chatting with Ryan on dealing with climate anxiety and stress as well, but more so how to deal with the stress that comes with being an activist. So check out that session coming up next. And we had a great time chatting with you all. And as always, you want a little more, connect to Gabby or connect to myself, and we're here. But on that note, it was lovely. So bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.